You're listening to The Power Project. I'm your host, Brandy Voth. I also like to think that I'm your guide along this journey of purpose, which is where you will hopefully end up at the end of this podcast. I'm a mom, a wife, a daughter, a friend, an entrepreneur, an advocate in the fight against human trafficking. I wear a lot of hats, y'all, but don't we all? And most importantly, I am passionate about inspiring women to go out and lead purpose-filled lives while owning your God-given power. I have this crazy belief that we are all better when we lift each other up, which is exactly why I created this platform to spotlight other women that are leading in ministry, business, and nonprofits, in the hopes that you at home will be inspired by their stories to get up and take action in order to walk in purpose and own your God-given power. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Welcome back to The Power Project, you guys. My guest today, Madison Anaya, is a speaker, a writer, a community builder, and a fellow podcast host. She hosts the Fearless Chase podcast, and she's really passionate about inspiring women to step out of fear and into who they were meant to be. Probably sounds a little familiar because she's a girl after my own heart, you guys. Let's welcome Madison to the podcast. Hey, Madison, how are you?
I am so good and so honored to be on the show. Thank you so much for asking me.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled that you're on here today, and I am the queen of a last-minute invite to a podcast because my schedule gets crazy, and when I have a free day of sitting still, I try to take advantage of every minute I can. So thank you for jumping on at the very last minute with me.
Absolutely. I completely get busy schedules.
So I thought it was funny. You and I were chatting before because social media and this whole podcast community and influencer community, it's so much smaller. It seems to have made like my entire world in a little snow globe at this point, because I really honestly thought that we were connected somehow in person. When your name was mentioned to me from a mutual girlfriend, I'm like, I know her. Mm-hmm. So it's funny that we've been connected, and we've been doing very similar missions with similar platforms, and we don't actually know each other in person until today when we get to meet via the internet. So nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. I know it is so crazy how small it truly does get on social media. And like we were just saying before we hit record, how it feels, they say like you're 3 people away from every person in the world, but it feels like with social media, you're really only 1 person away. And it's just crazy when, I would just move to New Braunfels this past weekend, and I went to a coffee shop and overheard 2 women talking about entrepreneurship and marketing. And I was just so excited that I ended up going over there and introducing myself. And they had just moved there as well from Chicago the same week. And I said, oh, you would really love my friend Amber. And she just happened to already know her as well. And then she knew several other contacts. It was insane. I'm like, how does this happen?
From Chicago.
Yes, she was from Chicago. I was from Houston. Yes, it's insane.
That's wild. So let's get a little information about you, because after all, I'm getting to meet you along with my audience. And I know we discussed this briefly, but I just really love getting to learn who you are organically and authentically while the listeners get to learn with me. I feel like sometimes when I know, okay, stick with me here because you're a podcast host, so you might get what I'm saying. If I have someone that I know in person and I interview them on the podcast, it seems really authentic and natural when I ask questions that I kind of already know the answers to. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, when I have someone that I only know via social media, if I do a pre-interview with you and I learn all the things and then I'm trying to remember to bring those things into the episode, it tends to feel a little inauthentic. Like I don't feel like I'm bringing the truest version of that conversation. So here we are. Let's jump in and let's get to know each other. You are a Texas girl.
Yes.
You are a podcast host. How long have you been podcasting?
I have been podcasting since July of last year. So I guess about a year and a half. And I have loved every bit of it. I truly like, so many people ask me like, oh, should I start a podcast? And I always say, if it's not on your heart to start a podcast, I would not, because it's so much work. And if you don't have the heart for it, and you know what I mean, I saw on your Instagram stories, you were talking about the editing and the behind the scenes and all of that. And I just was laughing because I was like, this is so true. But I have such a heart for connecting with other people in this way. And it's like nothing else. I love it.
It's so funny because I interviewed another podcast host earlier today, and she and I discussed the exact same thing, that it's the most rewarding project, but the least pay and the most time consuming, all wrapped together in one.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it literally, I have, and there's a lot of people, like there's a lot of buzz around starting a podcast right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are a lot of business coaches and marketing coaches that are promoting podcasts, encouraging people to start podcasts. And I almost think, like, I want to tell them, like, take a step back and remember how much work goes into this for a brand new podcaster. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely an act of love. And
Totally.
you have to love it. You have to love people, and you have to have some patience to deal with all of the technical issues. So on that note, what was your most difficult obstacle to overcome when you started podcasting?
That is a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked this question, but just off the top of my head, I think it was just getting comfortable with allowing myself to be me and not feeling like I needed to show up like every other podcaster that I listened to. I remember I reached out to my girlfriend, Jeanette Tapley, who had just recently started a podcast a few months before me. And she was kind of showing me the ropes and showing me, use this program and this is how you edit and all these different things. And I just remembered thinking, well, how many questions am I supposed to ask? And how am I supposed to ask them? And who should I reach out to? And how do I do that? And all these things. And I got so caught up in this like should mentality that I had major imposter syndrome. And I really struggled with that. And I struggled with figuring out who Madison Anaya was in this podcast realm. And I feel like you can kind of notice over the episodes, and I've even had newer listeners reach out to me and say, like, I can tell when you've kind of gotten comfortable and, going off script a little bit. So I just remember in the beginning, I was super stressed out about hitting all of my questions because I would always have an outline to go off of. And I would get so, like, I wouldn't even let any conversation build off of it. Like somebody would give me an incredible, like really deep, meaningful answer. And then I'd be like, okay, on to the next thing. Like I would not like allow myself because I didn't feel comfortable in it yet. And so I think that was probably my biggest struggle at the beginning.
Well, and I think that there's like a whole variety of ways that could be every single podcaster's struggle, in the sense of just really getting comfortable with who you are as a podcast host. Because I know that you and I spoke about it being kind of awkward when you can't see a person, when you're not doing it like via Skype where you have a face-to-face. And so just becoming comfortable with your role as the person on the other end of a microphone or the other end of a video call it seems to me like that we could apply that to every single podcast host in some way, shape, form, or fashion. What is your, and I promise you, this is not just an episode all about podcasting, but I find I like to, when I have other podcasters on, I like to ask them some questions. What is your greatest, your absolute favorite thing about podcasting?
Deep down, I really want to give you like a really like sweet, shiny answer. But the truth is I love getting to ask questions to people who would not normally be able to have the bandwidth to give me the time of day if it was not also going to other people. And I know that that's such a selfish answer, but that is the truth. I love getting to interview people who have been super successful in the dreams that they have been chasing and figuring out like, what did it look like for them to actually get there? And what are some similarities in maybe how I can tweak or pivot in my own journey? And so in getting more comfortable in who I am as a host, I've started to lean into those questions that I really want to know, because I've found that those are the questions that my listeners want most. They're like, oh my God, I was just waiting for you to ask this, and I was so thankful when you did. And so honestly, like, that is my truthful answer.
No, thank you. Listen, I am a brutally honest person, and I love another fellow honest female. And that is one of my favorite things also. Like the fact that I can ask those questions that not only I want to know the answers to, but other people want to know, and just have a conversation about it. I like the doors that it opens. And
Yeah.
so that I'm curious, do you know your Enneagram number?
I was hoping you would ask this when you said, do you know? I was like, oh, please ask about this. Yes. I am a hardcore 7 to a T.
Okay. So I'm a 3. I'm a 3, like a 3-wing 2. And I was curious because it seems that there are a lot of 3s in the podcast space.
Yes.
And that whole achieving thing and wanting to ask other people questions. That's why I was like, I wonder what yours is. So what part of being a 7 lends itself to that curiosity and that interest in other people's success and life stories, do you think?
So I think that it is that 7s have this inner need to not be confined to other people's rules and other people's ways of living. And I think that's why a lot of 7s have such an entrepreneurial spirit inside of them, because they want to be adventurous and they want to try these new things. And when they see that somebody else has been successful in that, they want to learn more about that and how they were able to kind of like step out of the boundaries and live with freedom, because ultimately that's what 7s want. 7s and 3s are very similar. And I actually thought I was a 3 at first for a very long time, until I realized that 3s have a need to be seen as successful. And I wanted to be seen as successful, but only because underlying that, it meant that I could be free from anybody telling me how I had to live my life in the confines of a normal corporate job. Not that there's anything wrong with corporate jobs. I have really great friends who absolutely love it and never want to be an entrepreneur or anything like that. And I'm sure there are 7s who also feel that way. But I think for me, that's where that connection lies.
Yeah, I'm married to a 7, and he is just as entrepreneurial minded. So I totally understand it.
Yes.
And so on the subject of the entrepreneurial minded and what drives you and fuels you, you are passionate about building community and helping other business owners. On this journey, which came first? Did the podcast begin and then develop into the work you're doing with business owners, or the community, or how did this evolve?
So long story short, I when I first got married, and I know this seems a little derailed a little bit, but I promise you it ties back in. When I first got married, I had all these ideas of what challenges I thought would arise. And I thought it would be things like, how to fold the towels the same way, or if I could cook something that we would actually both want to eat, or something other than just a grilled cheese and cereal, like that kind of thing. And it turned out to be something very different, very fast. Within a couple months of getting married, I ended up totaling my car, which is not a huge deal unless you're, like 21 and don't have the money in your savings. And then a couple months after that, I was in a 600 square foot apartment watching my father-in-law lose his battle to cancer. And I was only 6 months into my marriage at that point. And then 3 months after that, our house flooded in Harvey. And then 2 months after that, my mother-in-law got cancer. And then 3 months after that, my parents got divorced. And so I was in this like one thing after another, feeling like I was drowning, feeling like I was the only person who was a victim to life, feeling so alone in that. And I came across this video from Rachel Hollis, who has become a huge mentor for me. And she was just talking about how you can let life basically like define you, or you can let it be something that helps you and serves you. And while I, hated the circumstances that I was in, I knew that I had big, giant dreams in my heart. And I knew that I craved community. And I also knew that in the space that I was in, I felt very lonely and very bad for myself. And it wasn't the life that I wanted to be living. And so I finally decided, okay, I'm going to go after this thing, whatever the thing is. I don't even really know what the thing is yet. I just know that I want it and I want out of where I am now. And so that, looking back, like as a 7, that was super hard because I felt so out of control. And 7s are very adventurous, but I think it's also because that's in their hands. Like the adventure is because they chose it. And when you're thrown on an adventure, is I guess what I would call those 2 years, which were very hard. It just felt, I don't know, not what I wanted at all. And so I really seeked community in that element. And I got really interested in podcasts and things like that. And the more I started learning about podcasts, the more I learned about social media and building a platform for impact. And I thought, man, I know I'm not the only person who goes through hard things in life. Surely, like clearly there's people who are way worse off than me. Why are we not talking about this? Why are we not talking about all these different things? And so I started showing up on my social media. And then a few months into that, I went to the Rise conference in LA and I decided that I was going to leave school and create this. Somehow I wanted to be able to leave my job. And so I ended up starting a podcast, not because I thought that it would make money, because as you mentioned before, there's very little return unless you are, got millions and millions of downloads and whatever. But I just started it because I wanted to go on this quest of fearlessly chasing my dreams and not letting the fear of what other people thought about me or the fear of if it would work or the fear of failure hold me back. And so I wanted to start interviewing other people on how they did that and start giving these tools and stories and resources to other people who may have been in the space that I was in, feeling just super helpless and super just honestly down and stuck. And so through that, I ended up interviewing somebody who teaches people how to be a virtual assistant. I had never heard of that before. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And so I started it on the side. I ended up within like 3 months able to leave my job and did that full time. Realized within that my secret sauce within all of that was more of content strategy and less of implementation. Not that I couldn't do implementation, but that I was much stronger with strategy. And so I ended up throwing a women's conference a few weeks ago for women creatives and entrepreneurs. We flew in different speakers from all over the country and they talked on different topics and it was just amazing. But the biggest thing that I told them there is you may have come here alone, but you're not going to leave here feeling like you ever did. And so for me, it kind of all intertwines. And so I guess you could say community, and then the podcast, but it all has been very intertwined throughout the whole time.
I love every single piece of that. And I love that you took us down the entire journey of that, because I think that, and I want to go into this one.
Go for it.
So I'm at a place right now where I have been building this particular platform for since like March of, I think, the end of 2017, I really knew that I wanted to move into this. And then the beginning of 2018, I started really pursuing building. And like you said, I didn't really know what it looked like. I just knew that I wanted to impact women and I wanted to encourage women and support women. So I'm at this place right now, long story short, where a lot of people are recognizing and seeing what is going on, but they don't necessarily see all the pieces that have been laid in place in the past couple of years of building that, and how it all literally, it looks like, oh my gosh, you have so much going on right now, but it has all been part of this beautiful purpose and this beautiful plan all wrapped together. Like, which came first, the community or the podcast or the brand, or how was it orchestrated? And so I think that's important to point out, because someone can look at you and say, you had this successful women's retreat and you had people come in from all over the country and that was amazing, but they don't realize that the podcast was an integral part of that. And the job as a virtual assistant was important to the process. It all lays the foundation. It's all like we have these stones, that are pieces of our foundation that we are just placing and building the foundation. And I do believe that we can continue to build the foundation out and then build the structure up. And I think that it can all serve each other. So thank you. I appreciate that you went into all the detail on that, because it really does look like anyone that you see right now that is doing multiple things, because you hear the whole focus on the one thing, right? And I think people tend to get a little discouraged and frustrated and, okay, well, how do I do just the one thing? Well, in the beginning, you start with the one thing.
Mm-hmm.
You focus on the one thing. And then as you grow and as your brand grows and as your impact grows, you're able to build it into multiple things like what you've done right now.
This episode brought to you by Brandy Voth Beauty. Have you tried the #1 skincare brand in all of North America? Girl, what are you waiting for? Hop over to the-powerproject.com/powerfulbeauty, take a 5-question skincare consultation, and email yourself the results. As a thank you, I'm going to personally send you a gift in the mail. That's the-powerproject.com/powerfulbeauty.
So tell me a little more about your women's conference. Was this your first conference that you've hosted? Give us a little information on that.
Yes. So it was my first ever women's conference and I loved every bit of it. Some people like roller coasters and heights and all of that, and I hate that. I love the thrill of getting up on a mic. I love the thrill of putting something together and just saying like, man, I hope this works. Like I've put so much heart into this. So I actually went full-time self-employed in February of this year. And then in May of this year, I ended up taking this course called Knowledge Business Blueprint, and I took it under my mentor, Jenna Kutcher. And I learned a lot about basically how to start a mastermind. And I, being the 7 that I am, decided, no, we will take this much further than just like a 10-person mastermind at a coffee shop. Let's throw an entire conference. And so it was called the Confident Creatives Workshop. And we had different speakers talk on everything from mindset to personal branding to how to build loyalty on Instagram to finding purpose in the journey to setting up your finances the right way. We talked about everything, and it was really a space where women creatives and entrepreneurs could learn, grow, and connect together. And I just remember it was like, it's like your wedding day, you know, like it goes by so fast and you're just like, oh my gosh, no, I need to look around and appreciate it. And it was just a dream. I mean, leading up was a nightmare, honestly, because I did not ask for help. I did not take care of myself. I did not, because I decided in May, being a 7, that I would throw my first event in October. So I gave myself a whole lot of time, obviously. And I was the one who I built out the website. I did a promo video, and not just any kind of promo video. I needed it to be different than other people's and all of this craziness. I was the person, reaching out for sponsors, and I wore too many hats. And so I've learned so much from this. And things are going to look very different for next year. And I'm very excited for next year. We're even changing the name of it to be more cohesive, just all these different things that I've learned. But I am so thankful that I did, because there were a lot of things that held me back from wanting to throw my first event and thinking that I wasn't qualified or I wasn't old enough or I wasn't in the right space or people wouldn't come or people wouldn't care. And the moment that I just tossed that all to the side and said, it doesn't matter. I feel like God's saying now. And then it happened, and it was the most incredible thing ever. It was like a dream, honestly.
Okay. So I love hosting women's retreats. I love doing women's nights. I'm like you. Give me a microphone and let me pour into a group full of women and see them walk away, seeing themselves through the eyes of their creator who made them in all of their beauty and marvelousness. And I love it. Like it fires me up. And I, much like you, really stink at delegating.
Yeah.
And so in the other, I've tried to limit my women's retreats and my women's brunches and things like that to small scale. I have a dream of doing large scale one day, but I know myself. So I know that I'm a control freak, and I know that I tend to think that I'm going to do it better, so I don't ask for help. So what are you putting into place moving forward in the next event? How are you setting those boundaries to where that you do put on a really great event without burning yourself out and without doing it all yourself, and with giving yourself the liberty to be the creative rather than, the entire planner of it all?
That is a really great question that honestly I don't have the perfect answer for yet and haven't thought completely throughout yet. I know just off the top of my head, boundaries are going to look like forcing myself to make my health a priority, and not allowing myself to skip meals and skip exercise and skip those creative outlets that really fuel me, and also budgeting into the ticket price the help that I need to be able to outsource. So because this was my first event, because we weren't really I had no clue what I was doing, you guys. Like people were like, what's your budget for this? And I'm like, I don't know. Can you volunteer? Like 100% the amount of people who showed up and sponsored their time and joined in on the dream team and showed up, like it was insane. It was just the most incredible thing to just see people show up and say, I believe in your dream that's going to help other people. Like that is a huge honor, and very humbling experience, honestly, to see that, just to see it come to life and see that other people believe in it too. But for sure, outsourcing and making myself a priority throughout it is going to be a different focus, as well as we are changing it to be the Fearless Chase Conference next year, because that was one thing that I learned is that trying to have too many different names under your personal brand can be a little tricky sometimes for people. And if the name of our podcast is the Fearless Chase, so to have that cohesiveness. And then also I am actually moving in the space of, we are going to make it purely personal growth next year, because I think that is something that my heart is really leans towards. And I don't know why I didn't allow myself to make it purely personal growth this past year, but I'm really glad the way that it turned out, but I'm super excited for next year as well.
And I think that's something really important to speak to on that, is the fact that we want to teach all the things in all the time. But I do think you really have to decide, how can I make the biggest impact with the topics that are the most important to my heart in this time that we have together? And, and maybe it looks like there's a personal growth conference and then there's a business conference, and they're two separate, or a creatives conference. They're two separate things. Because I do think they're both super important, but I also think while there are people and women that both areas speak to, I've also seen, because I'm a personal development junkie. I'm a purposeful business junkie. I love conferences. I love the immersion of the experience. But I have seen people that say, well, I was here for the personal development and I don't have a job or a business that I'm building. I don't need those skills. I don't need to know about marketing and online presence. I want to be the best version of me and show up for myself outside of business. So I think that's a smart move. And I want all the details about next year's conference, because I'm down. Like I am so down. I have a friend that she and I have been working on a collaboration for one in North Texas. So maybe we all need to just kind of get together and do a little brainstorming together.
That would be amazing. And actually our day of coordinator for this past year is in Dallas. And she will also be helping us out a lot for next year's. And so actually that would be super great if I could make a trip up there and be able to just chat with all of you. I think she would love to join in as well.
Girl, I have a guest cabin with your name on it. A guest cabin. Come visit. So, but now I want to get into because you have 5 topics that you are really passionate about inspiring women with and teaching women with and coaching women with. Can you just highlight those? And I'm not asking for too much free information in one episode, but I would like people to know kind of what it is that you do.
Yeah. So as far as like the 5 areas that I focus on when it comes to finding purpose every day, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So whenever I was kind of going through that journey of those 2 really tough years, and trying to figure out like, okay, God, like what does my purpose actually look like right now? How can I make the most and truly step into who I was made to be right now and not just when the water's calm? After reflecting, there were these 5 areas that really just kind of kept coming to mind when it came to when you're chasing your dreams, how to be successful when you're chasing your dreams, but not just that, but also how can I show up and be present and appreciate where I'm at right now? And that first one started with identity. So knowing who I was and who I was going to root myself in when those other storms came. Because since then, clearly the waters have not been perfectly still and all of that. We've had other, issues that have come up or trials that have come our way. But because we have come at it from a stronger rooted system in hope and in knowing that God will always take care of us and always has, and that we are daughters and sons of the Most High King, like knowing that identity helps us to really trust in him. Now, of course, it's still frustrating. Of course, I still have meltdowns, but it's one of those meltdowns that's just like, why are you making me go through this? Like, I know you're going to take care of it, but this is so hard kind of thing. But knowing who I am in him has been huge, not just as a person, but even as an entrepreneur, of not getting caught up in comparison or, this whole like imposter syndrome. I believe that really boils down to your identity, because if your mission is to prove yourself to people, of course you're going to have imposter syndrome. Or if you're trying to, appear a certain way or whatever, it's like, why am I here? Like what is my actual identity? What is my purpose? And so that's the second one is knowing that you were made on purpose for a purpose, and you have to pursue it with purpose. That means like knowing what your why is every day. And people like exhaust that word to no end of know your why, know your why, know your why. But truthfully, like for real, like why are you giving up your time and giving up your money and giving up your energy and time away from your kids and time away from your husband? And why are you doing this? Truthfully. And so being able to ask myself that on a daily basis of, okay, this is who I am. This is why I'm doing this. And then the third thing is being strategic with making a game plan, because if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time. And so I think people get super overwhelmed with this one because they think, like I know where I'm at, know where I'm going. I don't know all the steps in between. I just get stuck. I get stuck. But if you can create a game plan, at least for the next 5 steps, that gives you the grace to know that you're on your step and that's okay, that you're on step 2 and that you don't need to compare Brandy on step 7. You go, hey, Brandy, so happy for you on step 7. I'm on step 2. I'm so excited, right? It's like when you're in the grocery store and you both have eggs and butter and bread on your list, and you've already got eggs, but I'm over here getting butter. And it's like, I'm not going to be mad that you already got your eggs. I know I'm getting to the egg department kind of thing. And it gives you that grace to say, I'm okay where I'm at right now. I don't need to rush to the next season. But also it gives me that confidence to know if I got to step 2, what means I'm not going to be able to get step 3. If I figured out how to get from step 1 to step 2, clearly I know that I can make it to the next step. I just need to allow myself the grace to be a beginner, because whether you're an intern or a CEO, if you want to grow, you're going to have to allow yourself the grace to be a beginner. And so the fourth thing is that you have to be willing to take a risk. Whenever I was leaving my job, I actually was so nervous to give my 2 weeks notice for so many different reasons. And I ended up calling like this emergency counseling session with my therapist. And I was like, I'm just so nervous to take this leap of faith. And she said, if you never take a leap of faith, you're never allowing God to move in faith. And I was like, dang, okay, yes, that's what I needed to hear, because I knew that God had placed these giant dreams on my heart, and even dreams that weren't so huge and audacious, just dreams in my heart of what my life could look like if I started stepping out in faith. And I was letting so many other things hold me back. And so being willing to actually take that risk. And then the last thing that I have found to be so important in finding purpose every day, while you're chasing dreams, while you're just living your life, while you're stepping in who you're made to be, is community. I mean, whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, we were made for community. We were made to do life together. It is the sole reason why we moved from Houston to New Braunfels, was because the community element in this area is just so life-giving to me that I was like, we have to get over here, please. Like, I am so fulfilled when I'm over here. Because, when you're an entrepreneur, most of the time, especially if you're a solopreneur, you're working by yourself all day and you're not really getting out unless you go to a coffee shop or anything like that. But knowing that there are other people out there who believe in you, who are holding you accountable, who are there to remind you who you are and why you're doing this, that has been such a huge element for me in this entire process.
It is crucial, and it's biblical. It's the Hebrews 10:25 about not neglecting the assembly, the meeting together, of coming and encouraging one another. And I think people miss that, especially like you said, in this place, in this position of being the entrepreneur and the solo entrepreneur and the person behind the microphone and the person behind the computer. It is so important to put yourself around others that are like-minded, that hold you accountable and lift you up. And I'm personally grateful to add you to my community. And I'm thankful that we were able to do this interview together. And I look forward to learning more about you and everything that you have going on. So where can people go to find everything that you do have going on, to your upcoming projects, listen to the podcast? Where can they hang out with you online if they're not lucky enough to hang out with you in person?
First of all, Brandy, I am so thankful to get to be in community with you. I just get so excited when I get to connect with other creatives. It is, like I said, just very life-giving for me. And if anybody else wants to connect and build that community element with us, my podcast is the Fearless Chase Podcast. You can find me at madisonanaya.com, or I mainly hang out over on Instagram, especially Instagram stories, at Madison Bailey Anaya.
You do a great job with your stories over there. I'm not that as I personally, this is going to show my age. I personally enjoy Facebook more than Instagram. I know. I'm not hip. I'm not a millennial. I'm on Instagram and I do the gram and I do the stories. I just, for some reason, feel like I connect more easily in Facebook Messenger because I'm a creature of a habit. But Instagram is where I connected with you. So
yes.
So we can go hang out, no matter whether you're a young hip millennial or you're, an old lady like I am.
Oh my gosh, you're not old.
Oh, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out to come hang out with us and my listeners, and for giving us an inside look at all things Madison Anaya.
Thank you so much. This has been so incredible.
Friends, I hope that you enjoyed what you heard today. As always, if you enjoyed what you heard today, could you do us a huge favor? Go write a review, rate us, and share us with all of your friends on social media. This is how we get to keep coming every single week, having these conversations that we bring to you, our listeners. It's also how we're able to book really incredible guests week in and week out. So show us some love, friends. I can't wait to chat with you next week, but until then, go out and live your best purpose-filled lives.